Baseball versus cricket. Why the US Marine Corps illustrates why America isn't an imperialist nation like the British Empire was. This episode is dedicated to Brian Davenport, the Treasure Island dress shop owner from Annapolis, Maryland, and Dr. Joel Ness from University of North Dakota. Ever wonder what baseball, cricket, and imperialism have in common? I didn't either until Brian Davenport, back in late 1990s, once stated he saw a correlation between baseball popularity and where the US Marine Corps had been to. I also started wondering why cricket seemed to be more popular among Southeast Asian nations compared to England. And finally, I kept wondering why cricket is more popular where people drive on the wrong side of the road. Okay, the left side. I've spent most of my adult life attempting to connect proximate causes to explain what we have today without playing favorites. In other words, if anyone asks, it's all been fair game in homage to DeGiorgio's description of Inspector Harry Callahan, aka Dirty Harry. Well, that's one thing about our Harry. Doesn't play favorites. Over the past 20 years, I have had both heated debates and civil discourses regarding whether baseball is a real sport, why its popularity outside North America seems to be correlated to the United States Marine Corps, and why cricket, at least the club versions, is a real sport, as well as why cricket's worldwide prominence shows America is nowhere near imperialistic as the British Empire was. I've had these debates, one by accident, with baseball fanatics from both New England and California, along with cricket fans from both British Isles and its former colonies. Here is how a debate, a short-fused one, started by accident. Back in early 2000s, I was headed out through an entrance guarded by an armed guard who was watching a baseball game. I stated, baseball wrong. She stopped me and asked, after some exchanges, are you an American? And I replied with, want to see the certificate? In those terms. When she asked, how could you say baseball's wrong? I replied with, Confucius say, man with four balls no can walk. She graciously, no, not so graciously, pointed to the door and told me, out. Which was quite wrong in itself because man with four balls actually walks to first base. Isn't that true? So I know what you're thinking. Why pick apart baseball? After all, there's plenty of other things I could pick apart in life. This just happens to come to me, so therefore I say, why not? Baseball as a United States national pastime is over 100 years old, essentially part of the United States tradition, unlike the US Air Force, which has habits in lieu of traditions. It is so integrated into North American societies to the point of prominence in both drama, think of the movie Field of Dreams, and comedy, Major League, Wow Thing movies. It even was an Olympic event until 2012. Boston Red Sox Nation fans, that's right, Nation fans, have a habit of telling New Yorkers, nice to meet you, Yankees suck. What is it about baseball that draws close to 110 million attendees at both major and minor league games? The average ticket cost for a Major League Baseball game is about $33 as of 2019. In addition, the average alcoholic beverage, let's say Coors Extra Gold, is about $8 to $9. Hot dogs range about $6 to $7. I hope they're foot long. For the die-hard fans, the average Major League Baseball license jersey, Boston Red Sox is $90. Let's assess baseball as a sport. Oxford's English Dictionary defines sport as a diversion, entertainment, or fun. It doesn't touch athleticism even by proximate association in its description. I gotta admit, this is rather disappointing, which means I've been wrong about baseball for most of my English-speaking years. In other words, yes, it is a sport, since athleticism is nowhere near a requirement per the dictionary. So how entertaining is baseball? The players obviously must be quite entertained by it or by related benefits such as sponsorships at the Major League Baseball level. The fans obviously watch it and spend more money watching 9 innings at stadiums, never mind the parking fees. Go mass transportation. In addition, fans also congregate at other venues where respective games are broadcast on large format television size screens, providing a steady source when the season is ongoing of dining/drinking revenue for such venues. ESPN commentators, many of them being former players who make a lot of money, still, courtesy of fans, they still are part of the whole franchise/enterprise. But that is where the entertainment seems to end. So far, I have not seen a baseball video game with outrageous physics, lack of rules enforcement, and ludicrous one-liners such as Tim Kitzrow infused NBA Jam on Fire edition. Tonight's matchup, the Beastie Boys versus the Stickmen. So baseball, as a national pastime, is a source of entertainment for both active and passive participants, with the latter providing not just revenue, but increased velocity of money transfer that ultimately makes the active participants, at least the sponsored ones, richer. North American fans, gotta add Canada into the mix, are free to do with their money and time as they choose. So whether they watch baseball due to pure interest or social pressures, i.e. Boston Red Sox versus New York Yankees, how they spend their finite resources not only for their entertainment but also to provide baseball players with additional finances to pursue other forms of entertainment, assuming they have the time to do this. How is it that baseball, being an American invention, has become popular in select countries around the world? Ever since baseball became an Olympic sport in 1992, which came to an end in 2012, and COVID-19 notwithstanding, will pick up again in Tokyo this summer. It's either 2012 or 2008. I lose track in all the excitement. The top 8 contenders for the medals consisted of Cuba, Chinese Taipei, or Taiwan for everybody else, outside of China, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Nicaragua, Canada, South Korea, and Japan. Some surprising contenders, although after further analysis it makes perfect sense, include Netherlands, Italy, Greece, and Australia. It's over 100 years old, but it is nowhere near as prevalent around the world as cricket. And I'll get to that in a little bit. Americans who either worked or served as religious missionaries introduced baseball to countries such as Japan, Nicaragua, and South Korea. Conversely, Nemesio Gilot, a Cuban, went to college in Alabama and introduced baseball to Cuba. After the Japanese adopted baseball, thanks to Horace Wilson, they introduced it to other colonies they conquered, such as Taiwan and a bunch of islands where the US Marine Corps liberated/invaded, depending on your point of view, in the Pacific. Baseball became big in the Dominican Republic after Cubans fled to the eastern side of Hispaniola. In 1911, JCG Gracia, did I pronounce that properly? Morgan, introduced baseball to Holland, but the reason why Netherlands do quite well at the Olympics is primarily because of the players coming from the Dutch Antilles, think Caribbean. It is popular in Italy as well as in Puerto Rico due to the US Army soldiers' presence. And in a fascinating case of immigration, Peter Angelos, an ethnic Greek and owner of the Baltimore Orioles, he actually helped to recruit talent for the 2004 Athens Olympics, who qualified for, that's right, Greek passports. The US Marines clearly did not introduce baseball to current top Olympic contender countries at the beginning, but they did spend some time there in war and continue their presence in these countries. The Spanish-American War brought them to the Philippines, Cuba, and Puerto Rico. World War II brought them, via the famous island-hopping campaigns heavily aided by previously mothballed US Navy battleships with the big guns lobbing shells that weighed or had the same mass, approximately the same mass, as Volkswagen Beetles, to islands previously annexed and are still part of Japan. Chesty Puller had some crafty one-liners in South Korea. They can't get away from me this time. Although they spent most time in conflict in Vietnam out of all the other conflicts that they have been involved in around the world, the sport didn't gain ground until a few years ago there, thanks to teams such as the Hanoi Fisheroo team. So baseball got introduced to various nations primarily due to either Americans working in these countries or respective nationals spending time in the US and bringing the pastime back. So is it true that wherever the US Marine Corps went to, they either introduced baseball or helped make it popular? Okay, that's really a separate thesis for some professional historian to delve into, Brian, assuming one is willing to spend one's own time and money or convince Major League Baseball to fund the study on publishing a 100-page something. Good luck, Brian. Simplifying this for the sake of being smart and lazy. Alright. Okay, mostly lazy. Except for Europe, wherever the US Marine Corps happened to, baseball remains largely popular. Conversely, even though the US Army has been all over Europe, except for Netherlands and Italy, baseball hasn't taken hold. But to be fair, cricket hasn't taken hold in continental Europe and Scandinavia either. This means the US Marine Corps' presence in other countries has a higher correlation to baseball popularity versus the US Army. The Marine Corps 1, the Army 0. Although baseball is largely derived from rounders, America started out as part of the British Empire, therefore one would expect cricket to be prominent in the US. But with history being what it is, revolution, rebellion, depending on your point of view, so why didn't cricket take root in the US considering history? After all, Philadelphia had a cricket society that was quite prominent until the early 20th century. If you look online, Michelle Greenbaum in the Why Americans Don't Fancy Cricket article makes a convincing case based on both history and psychology. It's worth looking up. Cricket as defined by the Oxford Dictionary as being a sport, it definitely originated in England, going as far as 1597. When you look at, let's see, records that are published somewhere, clearly it had over 400 years to be integrated into English society. Its popularity has permeated also into media, but more so in former British colonies. Examples include Bollywood movies such as Lagan and Dil Bole Hadipa. Did I say that properly? Namaste. These are drama and comedy movies respectively. Come to think of it, cricket has become more popular in the former colonies than in England, based on Cricket World Cup standings. I should point out, cricket remains out of the Summer Olympics, primarily due to its game length, i.e. 2020, as being too long. So what attracts 14.6 million tickets that, as I said, ticket holders to go attend these games in England and Wales? From a relative scale reference point of view, with England's population of 56 million as of 2020, each year about 26% of the population could attend games. Okay, in America, with 330 million people, wow. 1/3 or 33% of its population could attend games too. A pint of beer is about 4.5 British pounds at Manchester United, and average cost of a licensed polo shirt is about 55 pounds/quids. So would cricket be classified as a sport? Well, the dictionary absolutely says so. Cricket is different from baseball in that matches tend to last up to, that's right, 5 days. That's called test matches. And all players take turns bowling or pitching for the Red Sox Nation's folks within the match. This means all the players have an incentive to help everyone on the team with their weaknesses, especially the bowling part, which pays homage to team building, unlike baseball, where an outfielder may not be as easily interchangeable with a pitcher. So given references to cricket in various BBC TV series, it obviously is entertaining in England, never mind the British former colonies. BBC Sport has commentators on the sport too, who are indirectly subsidized by anyone who owns a TV in the country. It's the £157.5 per year tax for the privilege of watching BBC anything over public airwaves. Perhaps this is why drinking with friends/neighbors at local pubs is very popular. If 10 friends have a habit of going out for drinks together, why bother paying £1,575 by staying at home? The British pay 20% value-added tax rate for anything they buy anyways, compared to Montgomery, Alabama's 10% sales tax rate, edging California out just a little bit. So every pence saved is pence spent towards wine and gin. And yes, so far, I haven't found any video games that have outrageous physics and silly one-liners such as NBA Jam on Fire Edition. So we know cricket is quite popular, only being outdone by football or soccer for the North American audiences. That fans, by similar behaviors to baseball crowds, both directly and indirectly increase velocity of money transfer and transfer of the money to both players and proximate businesses related to enjoying the sport effectively as a national pastime. Soccer/football remains more popular worldwide compared to baseball and cricket. As of today, cricket remains popular primarily in countries that used to be part of the British Empire, as well as where they spent some time in. Per ICC World Cup results, most of the countries that make it to the top brackets were part of the British Empire at some point. This includes New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, India/Bangladesh, West Indies, Sri Lanka, and Australia. Go Penal Colony! In fact, The former colony the teams tend to do better than English teams, which must be quite insulting to the traditional English historians, yet remain a major boon to former colonies' nationalists. Cricket as an upper class sport eventually became popular amongst the masses in England with effective marketing. In former colonies, although it was the British governors and related sort who played cricket, the British had a habit of investing its version of infrastructure into its colonies, which made adopting British habits, including driving on the wrong side of the road, quite palatable. So cricket was bound to be part of this, as evidenced by how Indian, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi cricket teams give the English a run for their quits to date. Have you ever wondered why nations with outstanding cricket teams also tend to drive on the left side of the road? Alright. Japan clearly stands out here as an anomaly because they are more into baseball, just ask Hideo Nomo, yet they drive on the left side of the road. It clearly wasn't a British colony, so what gives? After some further research, the credit really goes to the samurai. Japanese roads tended to be very narrow in the shogunate times. If you don't have big machines back then, you tend to squeeze out as maximum benefits with minimal labor as possible with any kind of infrastructure, updates that the local governments tend to put into action. As an article on tofugu.com illustrates, since most samurai were right-handed, it was easier for them to walk on the left, so their scabbards wouldn't necessarily clatter with another samurai's, sparking a sword match. Now that's what I call traditional habits. So did the British Royal Armed Forces have a hand in spreading cricket all around the colonies? It's easy to draw correlations, just like the US Marine Corps all over the Pacific. But one major corporation, that's right, corporation, cannot be ignored. The British East India Company. It grew so profitable to the point by 1803, its private army was about 260,000, about twice the size of the British proper forces. If only Blackwater had that much resources back then or even today. India back in the 1800s included Pakistan and Bengal, now known as Bangladesh, which means a major British corporation's presence, not the army, but the corporation's presence, has a correlation to 3 major cricket contending nations at ICC World Cup matches today. Speaking of empires, I often meet people who declare that the US is an imperialist nation. Based on the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny, they have a historical point about this, but it is all relative from a metrics point of view. After all, the British Empire was about 500 years old and colonized far more countries than the United States, and as a result, its cricket as an export sport remains far more popular worldwide than baseball. The US today only has 5 protectorates, whereas Britain today is part of a 54-member bloc of Commonwealth of Nations. This shows Britain had 300 more years to export cricket to its former colonies, and the US would have had to take over 48 more countries to have parity of opportunities to popularize baseball, assuming it's done intentionally, which means actually following an approved plan, which according to Hans von Luckenwitten never did during World War II. Wrapping things up, I've come to assess that baseball's popularity spread by individual preferences, whereas cricket spread under a more systemic cultural exportation. The US Marine Corps in general did not initially spread baseball around the world, but by their presence alone, the correlation to baseball popularity is far higher than the US Army's. All fans in the end give their time and money to players as well as proximate businesses, which is good for increasing velocity of money during baseball and cricket seasons, especially the Red Sox versus the Yankees or India versus Pakistan. So between baseball and cricket, what would be a more civilized sport? Historically, that would have been cricket, since it was the English upper class that created its numerous rules, which don't make much sense even after a few reviews. Talk about being divided by common language. Hooliganism is often associated with soccer/football, especially when you watch matches between Poland versus Russia. Look it up. But baseball teams have been known to fight each other with fists. Just look at the movie Major League, the movie. That's right, the wall thing. Cricket, sadly, at least in India, is no longer the exception. But let's be fair about this. From a statistics point of view, when you look at India, India as of today has about 1.38 billion people, about 25 times more than England. So This means that for every incident of hooliganism in an English cricket match, one should expect about 25 times more brawls at the respective India's matches. This also helps to explain why India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh do far better in cricket than in England. When the population ratio is 25 to 1, 4 to 1, and 3 to 1, the numbers alone show how the former colonies today have higher probability of assembling the talent. Speaking of statistics, if cricket is a sport in India, the second largest populated country in the world, is baseball or cricket popular in China too? It turns out neither have any popularity in China. At least China in this case doesn't seem to care about what's popular elsewhere, just like with geopolitics. Similarly, the US tends to produce most number of professional baseball players compared to Japan, South Korea, Philippines, and Cuba. But let's be fair about this too. The US numbers include Puerto Rico. However, the Olympic medal results don't help this argument. Cuba won the gold medal 3 times, whereas the US and South Korea won them once since 1992. Here is an interesting factoid. At 2004 Athens Games, Australia, with a population 13 times smaller than the United States, got a silver medal, while the US didn't even make the Olympics bracket. What this tells me is that Major League Baseball's money talks when it comes to attracting talent from elsewhere. That's immigration in the true sense of the word, hard at play. One side note about immigration in immigrants. Clearly, both Major League Baseball and the Cricket League in England/Wales use immigrants to maximize their talent pool. So did the US Marine Corps. Here's an example. Maria Duame is the first female infantry marine who was also born in a Russian prison. Francesco Maria Scala, born in Naples, Italy, became a director of the US Marine Corps band. And then when you look at the British, they have the Brigade of Gurkhas, for example. In fact, come to think of it, the best Indian curry I ever tasted was actually in Whitechapel district of East London. And also, when I think about it, the best ethnic foods I discovered for the money was in most unexpected places, such as Tallinn, Estonia for blood sausages, and it's called the Virsivurst. And Lisbon, Portugal for pastel de Belém. It goes well with coffee. It's worth a bite, or 2, or 10. Some of you are wondering, which sport is more athletic between the two? It's easy to assume baseball is so because the pitchers approach and exceed 100 miles per hour with their pitches. Cricket players have a harder time as getting similar results because the ball they bowl, that's right, bowl, not pitch, has to bounce off the grass before it approaches the batsman. This means that even if baseball pitchers try bowling the ball, according to kinematics, thanks Dr. Ness, no collision between a ball and the field is ever 100% elastic or is of elastic collision in nature. Keeping in mind that Aroldis Chapman holds the world record for the fastest baseball pitch at 105.1 miles per hour or 169.1 kilometers per hour, and Shoaib Akhtar has it for cricket bowling at 161.3 kilometers per hour or 100.2 miles per hour. That's pretty close. One advice I have for all of you listening out there: don't make fun of baseball, especially when the person watching it is an armed guard. After all, the Star Trek universe has wisdom to share on this topic. Ferengi rule of acquisition number 192. Never cheat a Klingon unless you are sure you can get away with it. So, to both baseball and cricket fans out there, in homage to the Kevin Bacon game, the players owe you. The money you spend buying food and the drinks at game/matches bring revenue to the stadium, which pay money to the teams, which trickle into players' bank accounts. So by at least 3 degrees of separation, you are the players' sugar parents. Some of you are probably wondering what I prefer to watch between the two. So what's really worth my time? Baseball or cricket? I can try to make more money, but not more time. Since cricket has many more rules than baseball, there's really no sense in figuring out anything beyond the wickets and over and unders. If I had to choose between cheap beer and gin stirred in ice, I'll go with a Canadian gin called the Empress Gin, the 1802 series, to any short form cricket matches. Thank you, and see you next time.